COVID questionnaire, which will include the following questions. In the past 14 days, have you been in contact with anyone who has exhibited COVID-19 symptoms? Have you been in contact with anyone who has tested positive for COVID-19? Have you exhibited any COVID-19 symptoms? Or have you tested positive for COVID-19? Anyone responding yes to any of the above noted questions will be directed to participate in our event virtually. Temperature checks will be conducted upon event check-in. All event attendees, vaccinated and unvaccinated, will be asked to wear a mask. The health and safety of all of our guests, speakers, and vendors are of the utmost importance. Thank you for allowing us to make sure that we are all healthy and safe.
Hello and welcome to Steward Speakers 2021-2022 Speaker Series, powered by IUPUI. I am Matthew Steward, President and Founder of Steward Speakers.
And I am Kimberly Bostic, Board Chair and Managing Director at Steward Speakers.
After a very long year, we are excited to be able to put on live Steward Speaker events.
The disruption of COVID-19 impacted our ability to have live in-person events like many of the other organizations here in the city.
As we move forward in providing you an outstanding Steward Speaker experience, we want you to know that your health and safety are of the utmost importance to us.
For this reason, Steward Speakers has initiated a low to no contact ticket purchase, event registration, and check-in process. Additionally, COVID-19 protocols will be in place at all speaker events to provide a safe, healthy environment for our guests, speakers, and our vendors.
Please make sure you are familiar with our safety protocols. If at any time you need assistance to complete a purchase registration, please contact our office at 317-297-2905. Our team is more than happy to assist you.
Again, welcome to the Steward Speakers 2021-2022 Speaker Series powered by IUPUI. We look forward to bringing you engaging conversations that help improve the quality of life for us all. All event attendees will be asked to complete a brief COVID questionnaire, which will include the following questions. In the past 14 days, have you been in contact with anyone who has exhibited COVID-19 symptoms? Have you been in contact with anyone who has tested positive for COVID-19? Have you exhibited any COVID-19 symptoms? Or have you tested positive for COVID-19? Anyone responding yes to any of the above noted questions will be directed to participate in our event virtually. Temperature checks will be conducted upon event check-in. All event attendees, vaccinated and unvaccinated, will be asked to wear a mask. The health and safety of all of our guests, speakers, and vendors are of the utmost importance. Thank you for allowing us to make sure that we are all healthy and safe.
Hello and welcome to Steward Speakers 2021-2022 Speaker Series, powered by IUPUI. I am Matthew Steward, President and Founder of Steward Speakers.
And I am Kimberly Bostic, Board Chair and Managing Director at Steward Speakers.
After a very long year, we are excited to be able to put on live Steward Speaker events.
The disruption of COVID-19 impacted our ability to have live, in-person events, like many of the other organizations here in the city.
As we move forward in providing you an outstanding Steward Speaker experience, we want you to know that your health and safety are of the utmost importance to us.
For this reason, Steward Speakers has initiated a low to no contact ticket purchase, event registration, and check-in process. Additionally, COVID-19 protocols will be in place at all speaker events to provide a safe, healthy environment for our guests, speakers, and our vendors.
Please make sure you are familiar with our safety protocols. If at any time you need assistance to complete a purchase registration, please contact our office at 317-297-2905. Our team is more than happy to assist you.
Again, welcome to the Steward Speakers 2021-2022 Speaker Series powered by IUPUI. We look forward to bringing you engaging conversations that help improve the quality of life for us all. All event attendees will be asked to complete a brief COVID questionnaire, which will include the following questions. In the past 14 days, have you been in contact with anyone who has exhibited COVID-19 symptoms? Have you been in contact with anyone who has tested positive for COVID-19? Have you exhibited any COVID-19 symptoms? Or have you tested positive for COVID-19? Anyone responding yes to any of the above noted questions will be directed to participate in our event virtually. Temperature checks will be conducted upon event check-in. All event attendees, vaccinated and unvaccinated, will be asked to wear a mask. The health and safety of all of our guests, speakers, and vendors are of the utmost importance. Thank you for allowing us to make sure that we are all healthy and safe.
Hello and welcome to Steward Speakers 2021-2022 Speaker Series, powered by IUPUI. I am Matthew Steward, President and Founder of Steward Speakers.
And I am Kimberly Bostic, Board Chair and Manager.
Good evening. As you see, we have the countdown going. We'll be going live in about, I think it was 4 or 5 minutes. In the meantime, we have been doing a lot of communication virtual or via email, but we also want to make sure that we clean up our mailing list. So on each of the chairs, you should see an updated mailing list. Even if you think we already have your information, we ask that you please, during this next 4 or 5 minutes, go ahead and get that completed, and then just hold it up, and one of the hostess will come grab it from you. Thank you so much. We'll be starting in about 4 minutes.
All event attendees will be asked to complete a brief COVID questionnaire, which will include the following questions. In the past 14 days, have you been in contact with anyone who has exhibited COVID-19 symptoms? Have you been in contact with anyone who has tested positive for COVID-19? Have you exhibited any COVID-19 symptoms? Or have you tested positive for COVID-19? Anyone responding yes to any of the above noted questions will be directed to participate in our event virtually. Temperature checks will be conducted upon event check-in. All event attendees, vaccinated and unvaccinated, will be asked to wear a mask. The health and safety of all of our guests, speakers, and vendors are of the utmost importance. Thank you for allowing us to make sure that we are all healthy and safe.
Hello and welcome to Steward Speakers 2021-2022 Speaker Series, powered by IUPUI. I am Matthew Steward, President and Founder of Steward Speakers.
And I am Kimberly Bostic, Board Chair and Managing Director at Steward Speakers.
After a very long year, we are excited to be able to put on live Steward Speaker events.
The disruption of COVID-19 impacted our ability to have live, in-person events, like many of the other organizations here in the city.
As we move forward in providing you an outstanding Steward Speaker experience, we want you to know that your health and safety are of the utmost importance to us.
For this reason, Steward Speakers has initiated a low to no contact ticket purchase, event registration, and check-in process. Additionally, COVID-19 protocols will be in place at all speaker events to provide a safe, healthy environment for our guests, speakers, and our vendors.
Please make sure you are familiar with our safety protocols. If at any time you need assistance to complete a purchase registration, please contact our office at 317-297-2905. Our team is more than happy to assist you.
Again, welcome to the Steward Speakers 2021-2022 Speaker Series powered by IUPUI. We look forward to bringing you engaging conversations that help improve the quality of life for us all.
become intolerable for us to think about young people having to grow up next to other people who may at any point cause them harm unto the death. Because quite honestly, that's like Tuesday for me. And I'm telling you this not to harangue you, but hopefully to give you hope about the fact that this is not a brand new situation.
Thank you very much. We're thankful to be back this season with an in-person audience, and we also have a audience that we're streaming, so we're getting back to where we were, so give yourselves a hand. I am Matthew Steward, and I would like to welcome each of you to the Steward Speaker Celebration of Women's History Month. For more than 35 years, Steward Speaker's goal has been to bring enlightened guest speakers who resonate in a meaningful way within the greater Indianapolis community. And it is just an honor to have been able to do this for 35 years. It is our sincere hope that our sustained efforts to keep the conversations going will help bridge the gaps that exist between people of different races, cultures, genders, and generations. I believe that tonight's event will inspire, will encourage, and challenge each of us to have a greater understanding and appreciation for the challenges, contributions, and accomplishment of women to not only our community, but the entire world. I would now like to introduce you to our MC for this evening, WRTV Channel 6 anchor Nicole Griffin. Nicole grew up in Indianapolis. She is a graduate of Ben Davis High School and Ball State University. Do we have any Ball State alumni? Hey, Ball State. Returning to Indianapolis after her career in broadcasting took her to 1011 News, the CBS station in Lincoln, Nebraska. Please help me welcome to the stage Nicole Griffin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Nicole Griffin. As he mentioned, I am the evening anchor at WRTV. I anchor the 5:30, 6, 7, and 11 o'clock newscasts. So I'll be back there tonight right after this. Shout out to my co-anchor for holding it down for me this evening. We are here tonight to celebrate women's history. And as we celebrate the achievements of women, we understand that more often than not, their accomplishments are not without facing challenges and obstacles that have a long history of inequities from pay, career advancement, harassment, and as we know, the list can go on. But in spite of these challenges, women are continually finding their place, breaking down gender bias norms, and paving the way for the next generation of women. WRTV is a proud sponsor of Steward Speakers and the celebration of Women's History Month. And as we celebrate women, this is a wonderful opportunity right now to honor other women. At this time, we will have a special presentation from the Indianapolis Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. We do want to invite Dr. Johnson, the president of the Alumni Chapter, to the stage now, as well as Professor Harris Perry to the stage. And during this presentation, we also want to invite all the members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority to stand up for the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am Dr. Gwendolyn Johnson. I am humbled and proud to serve as the president of the iconic Indianapolis Alumni Chapter, where over 300 members stand proud with me for community service, sisterhood, scholarship, and social action. We are honored and we are proud to stand this evening with our soror. We would like to, as a group, present you with a small token of our appreciation. We're so proud of you. We're so proud of your scholarship, your service, and of course your love for the sisterhood. Soros, join me, and everybody join me in thanking her for the fine work that she's doing, and we're proud of you. And because we love her, we want to present just a little something for you because we care, and we just want to say thank you. She said, is there chocolate involved? There's no chocolate, but I think you'll be pleased. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now we do have a list of sponsors that makes evenings like this possible. So we want to give a shout out to all the sponsors at this moment. We have Lilly Endowment, CICF, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Marion County Public Health Department, Lumina, FedEx, One America, the Warren Performing Arts Center, WTLC, WRTV, Indianapolis Recorder, Indianapolis Airport Authority, AFSME Local 725. We also have Dr. Albert Allen and family, Dr. Cheryl Allen and family. Give them a round of applause, please. Before we introduce our next speaker tonight, we do want to give a special shout out to all of our virtual members watching tonight. We know in this age of COVID, we do a lot virtually, so we do have several people watching at home. And as you watch the speech tonight, make sure to take down questions because you will have a time for questions later on. Special shout out to those at Ball State University watching virtually right now in the Gender Studies program. Chirp, chirp. All right. Now we would like to introduce the IUPUI's interim chancellor, and I've had a chance to talk with him tonight. I feel like I can call you Andy now. Interim Chancellor Andrew R. Klein. He is the Paul E. Beam Professor of Law at Robert H. McKinney School of Law here at IUPUI. Klein has been honored for years of service to IUPUI and to McKinney School of Law as Dean, including his dedication to McKinney students, alumni, faculty, and staff, his vision for strengthening diversity and inclusion, and his ongoing commitment to educating the next generation of legal minds here in Indiana and beyond. Klein has served as Chief of Staff in the Office of the Chancellor and Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at IUPUI. He was appointed the 12th Dean of the McKinney School of Law in 2013, and he served until his return to faculty in 2020. A dedicated classroom teacher and instructor, he has garnered numerous awards, including 5 teaching awards, 3 faculty leadership awards, 2 outstanding administrator awards, as well as the Indiana University Trustees Teaching Award. He received the Black Cane Award presented by the McKinney student body in 2004. We worked on this a little bit. He was like, we don't need to go too long about me, but he's very kind. We do want to help welcome me right now, Interim Chancellor Andrew Klein.
Wow, thank you so much, Nicole, and good evening to everybody. I'm really honored that my first opportunity to deliver remarks as interim chancellor of this campus is a welcome to the Steward Speaker Series. You know, it's hard to believe, but it's just over 2 years ago that we last held a Steward Speaker Series event that featured Ambassador Susan Rice. I know some of you were here for that. We did it on this campus, in this space, just before the COVID-19 pandemic curtailed such gatherings. So I am delighted to be here together tonight and virtually, and I'm delighted that IUPUI is once again able to host a Steward speaker on campus. And Matthew, you stole my thunder a little bit, but how about a round of applause just for being here, right? Well, we're proud to be the title sponsor for the Steward Speaker Series, and I just want you to know that I'm personally proud to be speaking at an event like this. Some of you in the audience know, well, everybody knows now that I'm a lawyer. My previous role on campus was as dean of the law school. Going way back, I started my legal career as a law clerk to Judge Joseph W. Hatchett, who at that time was on the United States Federal Circuit Court for the 11th Circuit in Florida. That was an incredible experience for a brand new lawyer, as Judge Hatchett was a very important figure in breaking down racial barriers in my profession in the South. He was the first African American to serve on a federal appeals court in the Deep South ever. Before that, he was the first African American to serve on the Florida Supreme Court, and he remains the only African American to be elected to statewide office in Florida since Reconstruction. He was an incredible role model. He instilled in me, and he instilled in all his clerks, a deep respect for how the law can serve as a tool in the fight for equity and justice. You know, how fortunate that years later my career brought me to IUPUI, where this type of understanding is a part of our culture. Here at IUPUI, we're an institution with a strong commitment to diversity and inclusion, with a goal of educating people, improving lives, and creating community. Our history as a campus reinforces the need for that commitment. Years ago, a thriving African American community once stood where this campus now sits. So it's important that we acknowledge and respect those who were here before the campus was formed and do everything we can today to make our community a better place for all. Let me share just briefly a few things that we're trying to do here on campus to prove all of that. First, we're working real hard here on campus to make education affordable for students who need it the most. So for instance, since 2015, we have dramatically increased merit-based aid at IUPUI from around $2.7 million to $10 million annually today. Thank you. We've formed a partnership to make free college a reality for many. Working with the city of Indianapolis, we've created a program called Indy Achieves. If you are a qualified resident of Marion County with financial need, we'll meet that need, and you can go to college without any financial barriers. IUPUI today, thank you. We're home today to nearly 600 Indy Achieves scholars through that program. Second, thanks to the leadership of new IU President Pamela Whitten, IU has launched a major diversity hiring initiative, recruiting and retaining diverse faculty, and not just so that our students of color have role models, but so that all of our students can learn from faculty that come from a wide range of backgrounds and perspectives. And finally, campus and community collaboration help us all succeed, and there might be no better example than the magnificent renovation of the Madam Walker Legacy Center over on Indiana Avenue, where the new IUPUI Center for Africana Studies and Culture is now based. I had the privilege of serving, I'll take the applause, thank you. I had the privilege of serving on the Walker Board for a number of years, and it's really great to see that renovation come to fruition. So these are a few examples of our commitment here at IUPUI to help all of our students progress and succeed. I could go on and share more about IUPUI, but it is time for us to welcome tonight's feature speaker, and it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Melissa Harris Perry, an educator, media commentator, intellectual author, and outspoken advocate for change. Dr. Harris Perry serves as the Maya Angelou Presidential Chair at Wake Forest University, where she teaches courses in American politics and elections, at the intersection of race, place, and gender. What really stands out when you read Dr. Harris Perry's biography is that she's always working to find ways to communicate and educate about important social issues. This includes having hosted the award-winning Melissa Harris Perry Show on MSNBC, co-creating and co-hosting the podcast System Check, and hosting her current podcast, The Takeaway. A sought-after public speaker, she's also written numerous books. Her writing has appeared in outlets such as the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, Glamour, Harper's Bazaar, The Nation, and more. I'll add that Dr. Harris Perry's social media presence is one to watch, so you can follow her on Twitter at @mharrisperry. Dr. Harris Perry's work also occupies an important role in the academy. She received a bachelor's degree in English from Wake Forest University and her doctorate in political science from Duke University. She also studied theology at Union Theological Seminary in New York. She's previously served on the faculties of the University of Chicago, Princeton University, and Tulane University, in addition to her current appointment at Wake Forest. Dr. Harris has been recognized with numerous honorary degrees and awards, more than I can list here, so I'll stop at this point and just say that on behalf of IUPUI and the Steward Speaker Series, please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Melissa Harris Perry.
The number of AV things is high, so let me make sure that I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to do. Do you want the lav mic on now, or you want me to wait till we sit down for that one? Not now. Great, perfect, because it is not on now. Good, so. I've been doing, for 2 years now, lots of these lectures virtually, and I am thrilled for everyone who is joining us virtually. We'll try to make sure we send plenty of energy and enthusiasm digitally as well, because I did host a cable television show for 4 years. When you're watching television, it feels like a pretty collective event, right? Like you feel like, oh, we're in here together. But the reality is that it's mostly just like you and a lens, right? And so you get you can really, I can talk to an iPhone, baby. I can make the eyes, we can do the thing. So in certain ways, I was all ready for the digital pivot, right? Because that had been very much what we were doing. But it is true that there is nothing quite like being able to be together. So it is very lovely, and I appreciate it. Now, of course, being together also means sometimes I do have a tendency to talk a little swiftly. Sometimes, our mic will not be great. So I'm Southern. I'm not just Southern, I'm Southern and country. So please feel free, if you can't hear me or understand me, just call out. I will adjust. Okay. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I got an opportunity to learn a great deal, or at least, I guess maybe not a great deal, but a little bit about the family. I'm excited because I'm going to share a little bit of the story of my own family, so thank you for sharing some of the story of your family. I truly appreciate it, and I am putting away in my head the legacy that you all have built here, and thinking about what that means to build legacy that contributes to community in this way. So thank you both so much for inviting me. Now, speaking of dancing and being down with the digital devices, I have 153,000 slides and no clicker changer. So we are going to be together tonight to make this happen. All right. So we're going to go ahead and advance to our first one. We'll see the big American flag there. And this is what we're going to be up to tonight, because we're talking about centering the stories of Black women, or centering Black women in the American story. And so we're going to ask, what are the stories? And we're going to ask, who are the storytellers? We're going to ask, what are the stories and who are the storytellers? If you recognize these women, these are the mothers of the movement. I have rarely been as privileged as I was in 2016 when these women came and joined us at the Anna Julia Cooper Center at Wake Forest University. These women who've all lost a child. Sandra Bland's mother, Eric Garner's mother, Trayvon Martin's mother, Dante Wright's mother, and Lucy McBath, the only of the mothers of the movement who had some measure of justice. Her son, Jordan Davis, was killed, not by law enforcement, he was killed by a civilian at a gas station who thought that the boys were playing their music too loud in the car, if you'll remember that. She is now a member of Congress from Georgia. Well, except, I know this is, America, what's the story? Okay, so like there's the story and then the rest of the story, right, as our friends said. In the rest of the story, they just redrew her district, right? So Lucy McBath, this black woman whose child was killed, who goes into politics only because her child is killed. The seat she holds right now in Congress was Newt Gingrich's seat in Georgia. So if you're wondering how Georgia went blue, you got to understand the demographic changes that create a situation where Lucy McBath holds Newt Gingrich. I'm so glad I have an adult audience. This is exciting. Y'all are like, I know who Newt Gingrich is. Yes. I tell you, when I first started teaching at the university level, I was 25, my students 19 or 20. We sort of had the same reference points. Now I'd be like, Newt Gingrich, and they're like, I'm telling you, I know it's, but like they're right on the edge of not quite knowing who Barack Obama is. They're like, whatever. I'm the same age, my students keep getting younger and younger and younger. So they redistrict her and put her into competition with another Democrat and gave her district away. When I tell you the stuff that is happening in the world is wild. So we're going to ask, what are the stories? Who are the storytellers? And we're going to use some tools for answering. Oh, y'all are still on the old side. Just that one don't even exist no more. Just go on past that one. Okay, there we go. We're going to use some tools. So this is our little red toolbox, our little crimson toolbox. You know, I never was particularly open about that. I mean, I wasn't in the closet as Delta, but I just didn't really talk about it that much. And then it was one Sunday on the show, we needed an E-block. We needed our last little final, 3 minutes. We didn't have a thing. I was like, oh, it's January. It's, it's 100 years. Let's do it, because it was 2013. I was like, well, I'll write a little thing. I don't know if anyone else ever saw any segment on the show, but every soror in America saw those 3 minutes. And my husband was like, oh, you out now? Go give a lecture now. See if you can't even go anywhere not wearing red. So I'm out. I've embraced it. We're all here together. My sister pledged Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated at Howard University in the fall of '82. So she barely even acknowledges that I am a Delta. She's like, whatever that thing is that you did. See, you're sort of like, mm-hmm, yes, ma'am. But we are going, nonetheless, to look into our Black feminist epistemology toolbox, right? But in practical terms, what does that mean? So in other words, we're gonna answer those two questions. What are the stories? Who are the storytellers? And we're gonna do it by using some tools from our Black feminist epistemology toolbox. So there are 3 tools. The first is Black girl skepticism. Y'all already know what Black girl skepticism is. Be sure and be clear that when I use the word girl, I use it as a term of affection, and I use it as a term that describes the girls that live in the grown women selves of who we are. So I don't use it in a Like, don't hear Jeff Sessions coming out of my mouth talking about girl. Don't hear that, right? I want you to hear the girl that is inside of us that knows things even when we may not have a word like epistemology available to us, but we have a sense of awareness in the world. That is the girl, and I'm also the mother of girls. And so I appreciate the girl, and I try to nurture the girl that lives in me. I try to remember to play. So black girl skepticism. The sister here with the barrettes, with the look, I don't know if you've ever seen what the rest of that picture is. She is standing with Hillary Clinton. Okay. I enjoy us a lot. All right, so black girl skepticism is our first epistemological tool. Our second tool is we're going to ask a question that emerges from black girl skepticism, and it is the question, what truths are missing here? Now, I want to be clear about this frame. When you ask what truths are missing here, you're not saying that the thing that exists is a lie. All right, so this is an important nuance that those who have a critique of the thing that they call critical race theory, which is not critical race theory, but it's the thing that they call critical race theory. It's like the art is formerly known as critical race theory. But one of the nuances that because I was like, no one is teaching critical race theory in K through 12. No one. How could you? They would not know what the words mean. How could that? No one is doing that. But the thing, formerly known as critical race theory. So the nuance, though, that is missed is that to ask the question, what truths are missing here, is not to say that the thing that we are discussing or the thing that we know or the thing that we've established is a lie. Sometimes it does. Sometimes the introduction of a truth means that the other thing is a lie. Sometimes it means that there are more truths than we're paying attention to. Right? So we're going to be asking what truths are missing here. And then the third tool we're going to be using is a tool called Black Girl Genius. Now, I promise I'm going to explain a little bit more of why this particular image goes with Black Girl Genius as we go forward, all right? So we've got Black Girl Skepticism, the question of what truths are missing here, and Black Girl Genius. All right, so let's make this more concrete. And we're going to make it more concrete by a story. And this first story is, interestingly enough, connected to what we just heard from your interim chancellor. I'm doing a little story about higher ed. There's a big story in America. It's just I was just reading this incredible book. I wish I could have brought it, but I wouldn't have been able to carry it. It's this big, it's huge. In 1940, only 6% of white Americans, adult white Americans, had a college degree, 6%. Now, it is still true that only a minority of Americans, right, have a college degree, but only 6% in 1940. My parents were born in 1941 and 1943. And when I think about the idea that at the moment that my parents are born, it is a tiny sliver that have the capacity and the opportunity to go to college. But in post-World War II America, as you can see, we changed that. And I want to be clear, it's not that like the fluoride in the water made everybody smarter and then they could all go to college. That's not what that graph is, right? That is an opportunity graph, not a capacity graph, right? There were always plenty of smart people. There were always plenty of capable people, but there wasn't the opportunity and the access. And we as a country made a decision to invest in human capital. Right? Part of it was greatest generation goes, fights in World War II, and we as a country are like, you know what, we're going to make some investments. We're going to build highways that connect your communities to your cities where you can work. We're going to build you some low-cost housing, and you can buy it with the with an FHA loan, and we're going to invest through the GI Bill in your capacity for human capital. We do this right here. That is true. It is a truth. That graph is not a lie. That graph is a truth. Okay. And let me tell that story a little bit more, as our friend Joe Madison would say it, down where the goats can get it. So, What's that story? That's a story of, right, greater access. So let me tell you a little bit about who the storyteller is in this one. This is the Gray family. This is a picture from Christmas 1958, Spokane, Washington. Leo Gray is there in the middle. His wife, Anne Gray, is there in the red dress. Leo was born in 1908. Anne was born in 1910. They are both the children of Latter-day Saints, but particularly, Leo is the child of Latter-day Saints immigrants who came from England and pushed handcarts across the American West. I actually just saw some young men, some Mormon missionaries, standing out here before we walked in. I don't think they knew I had a handcart slide in my, I bet they'd be surprised. Leo never never went to college, nor did Anne. Anne never worked a day in her life. She worked every day of her life. She never worked for pay outside her home a day in her life. She did all kinds of other fascinating things. Leo Gray drove a Wonder Bread truck. I'd say this is a white family. These white people. He drove a Wonder Bread truck. Okay. All right. He eventually became a sales manager at Chrysler. They were able to buy a little house. They sent all 5 of their children, 3 girls and 2 boys, to college. Nobody had $1 of debt when they graduated. When Leo passed, he passed the house on to Anne. When Anne passed away, there was enough money in the sale of that house for each of these kids. These are, in the orange there with the braid, that's my mama. That's Diana. So this story is a true story. It really happened. My white people are this white. Okay. I know, Barack Obama liked to be up in there talking about, oh, my white lady. I was like, you might have Kansas, son. I got the hand carts, American West. The story that I just told you does not exist anymore, full stop. White folks cannot do that anymore. Part of what happens in America is that when we're telling the stories, we also sometimes fail to tell that that story actually does not exist. And I can tell you that Anne Gray definitely thought that the people who made that story not exist are us, right? She saw that story going away and she was like, oh, somebody must have broken the story. And again, as someone for whom there hadn't been an investment in education and human capital, she figured it was us in the broadest sense, brown and black folks. This is not okay, it just is. It's just the truth. But I can already see in the audience, on the next slide, a little bit of black girl skepticism. Good job, right? Y'all are all up in the toolbox. From the moment I put up the first slide, sister over here was like, getting the black girl skepticism out the toolbox. I put the very first slide up, started talking about the FHA and transportation and building some highways, and you were like, you know where they built the highway, right? You know where that highway, that big, you know, oh, GI Bill, did y'all get one? No, of course you didn't, right? Okay, yes. You were deep in the toolbox. You were like, okay. I don't even have to tell y'all to use it, just in it. All right, so next. So we're going to ask the question with our black girl skepticism, what truths are missing here? So what is the story, right? If we keep moving, what is the story? On the one hand, there's this story of an investment in human capital simultaneous with a complete disinvestment in human capital. And yet, even if we tell the story just like that, like, oh, in these moments of segregation, then we're going to miss this other story. So I want to go to the next because there's another storyteller here. And this is the story of Richmond's genius twins. Y'all will appreciate this story. There at the chalkboard are Wesley and William Harris. They are the genius twins of Richmond, Virginia. They are high school seniors. This is a 1960 Ebony magazine that you're looking at here. They are heading off to college, the first in their families to attend. They are in a segregated public school, and in this segregated public school, they have had the highest order math and the most intensive level science, and they have been treated with love and respect. And these men, if you go to the next slide, go on to do some pretty extraordinary things. Wesley Harris becomes the Charles Stark Draper Professor of Aeronautics and Astronautics at MIT. He goes on to become the first director of MIT's Office of Minority Education. Served as Associate Provost for Faculty Equity. William Harris, who's more in the foreground there, retired as the MLK Visiting Professor at MIT after serving as Chair of Urban and Regional Planning at Jackson State, and prior to that, about 25 years at the University of Virginia, where he was the first Dean of African American Affairs. William Harris is my father. Wesley Harris is my uncle. That too is part of the story, this massive disinvestment in human capital, but nonetheless a deep community investment. So I want to go to the next slide because we are not done asking the question, what truths are missing here? See, if we stopped right there, then we've told this story and we get to clap our hands and yay, you all went on and you got the big degrees. All right, because the reason I know about that Ebony article is, so there's 5 of us who, my dad has 5 and his twin brother, my uncle, has 6, so there's 11, right, in that crew. Every single one of us have that dang thing in our house. Not everybody has a frame, but everybody's got it. Everybody knows it, you know, and we have the family reunion every 2 years, and we tell you, we're the children of the twins, and the story is this twin story, and the twins, and the twins. And all the older brothers, and sisters, especially Aunt May passed, but Aunt May be like, oh my God, with the twins. Enough with the twins, right? May was the only girl in the family. She was like, whoo, tell you about the twins. Wes couldn't even hold his own bottle, so. Big sister be petty till she passes away, just. Love my people. But we all think of it as the twin story. We all tell it as the twin story. And then about maybe 4 years ago, one of the nieces, my eldest sister's children, was like, have y'all read this part? So let's go to the next slide. Even with the scholarship aid, so go to that second paragraph right there. So even with the scholarship aid, Mrs. Harris, that's my grandma, Rosa, she realizes that sending the twins to college would be difficult, but I want them to go. I've already planned for how I can give them the money I saved by their not being at home. The twins will get a college education. I was like, yeah, I think I've read that part. But then on the next slide, there's this other part that if I had read it, at least as a young person, it had never entered my whole consciousness. Their summer income, which their mother, that's my grandma Rosa. Let me pause. That's my grandma Rosa, who's a genius. That's my grandma Rosa, who could make a wedding dress without a pattern. That's my grandma Rosa, who I don't think finished high school, but certainly never anyone invested in her human capital. That's my grandma Rosa, who had terrible arthritis in her fingers and in her knees. That's my grandma Rosa, who used to make runny eggs and make you eat every bite anyway. But I didn't realize how good those eggs were because she had chickens out back, and those were the eggs from the chickens out back, and they were a little runny, but good for us. That's my grandma Rosa, who's a domestic worker. That's my grandma Rosa, who's the maid. Their summer income, which their mother, that's my grandma Rosa, says goes to buy 3 tons of coal for heating the house in the winter, was curtailed last year when Wesley attended an 8-week science seminar at Howard in Washington, and William a like seminar at North Carolina College in Durham. Their summer income, which their mother said goes to buy 3 tons of coal for heating the house in the winter. So that means my grandma, who I'm pretty sure didn't finish high school, somehow knew that these boys, these twins, needed to go to a summer program, and she let them go to that summer program, and my grandma was cold all winter. And I've made a lot of sacrifices for my children on any given day or night, but I have never even been faced with the question, it's never even been, I've never been cold for a season with arthritis when I work on my hands and knees so that my children can go to school. I am her grandbaby, and I have never been faced with the question of it. So what truths are missing here, this ain't the twin story at all, folks. It really isn't. I mean, my dad is smart and my uncle's smart, and if they walked in here, they'd have the big voices and they'd be smart, and you'd hear them and they'd be very smart, and they're lovely and they give to community, but it just ain't their story. It's Grandma Rosa's story, because I'm sure I'm telling you, she was. Remember I had said he was engineering? She could make a wedding dress without a pattern. Who can make a wedding dress without a pattern? The woman was an engineer. She was a scientist. She was a farmer, which meant she did all of that, but nobody was ever made room for her to go to school to do those things, but she somehow knew how to make room for them to do it. So on the next slide we ask, so what difference does that make? If we make it a story about Grandma Rosa instead of the twins, or at least in addition to the twins, then that's when we get to that next tool, which is Black Girl Genius. And what I want to do about what happens when we do that is on the next slide. Because this is a slide I used to teach in a very different kind of way. This is the percent of US women in STEM, all right? So these are women working in STEM fields who report a variety of things. So as you watch the dark blue line, that's Black folks. Latinas are light blue, Asians are light gray, white folks are darker gray, and these are all women. So these are people who've reported these experiences, right? Having to provide more evidence of competence than others to prove themselves, right? We already know that, one be twice as good. And as you see, that's a majority experience for all women, right? But particularly heightened, right? This one's fascinating. Colleagues have suggested they should work fewer hours after having children. Nobody thinks Black women and Latinas should work any less. They're like, come to work more. That at work, they find themselves pressured to play a stereotypically feminine role. I think this is also fascinating, right? Look, African-American women not pressured in that particular way, but keep going, right? All the way to the end. They've been mistaken for either the administrative or custodial staff. So almost 50%, right, of both Black and Latina women. So I used to teach this slide as a slide about racism, as a slide about data, about implicit bias, whatever that is. Now I teach it as a slide about pride. You tell me I look like the maid, you ain't wrong, because I do look like Grandma Rosa. And Grandma Rosa was the maid, the help. And y'all ain't know it, but she was typically the smartest person in the room. I want us to put Black women at the center of our stories because it will change what our story is. It doesn't mean that that ain't racist, to be clear, right? I want to be clear. It doesn't mean that ain't racist, that if you think I'm the maid, but what you think the maid is not what I have to think the maid is. If the maid is at the center of the story that makes my being in the room possible, I look like the maid, I'm standing on the maid's shoulders, I'm eating the maid's food, I am the maid. I do, in fact, look like her, and so does baby Anna. I mean, woo, Anna looked like Rosa, and got kind of an attitude like her, too. Anna's my 8-year-old. All right, let's do another one. All right, what is this story? Okay, so y'all done already heard my daddy was the first dean of African American Affairs at the University of Virginia, starting in 1975. My little half Mormon, half Jim Crow Black girl self grew up right after Loving v. Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia. You gotta love it. All right, and I like to say I could see the Monticello Mountain from my window. Not quite, but there was, Mr. Jefferson's presence is intense in Charlottesville, Virginia. So I do have a certain place in my soul for the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution, not as much. Not as much. The Constitution is a document that actually implements things, and therefore, as a political document that actually implements things, it's full of a lot of troubling compromises. You think Build Back Better is compromised? I mean, the Constitution. Lots of troubling compromises. But the Declaration of Independence is an aspirational document, right? The Declaration of Independence is basically like our Zelensky moment. It's like, you know what, Putin, King George, what you can do with your Putin, King George-ness, you can take that somewhere. It's a really good document, right? Because it doesn't actually say what is, it says what we aspire to be, right? The document says we hold these truths to be self-evident that all persons are created, okay, I cleaned up the gender, that all persons are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now you may, well, it does say property. No, it don't. It says pursuit of happiness. It says we hold it to be self-evident. I'm gonna write a whole bunch more words and I'm gonna give you some evidence, but we hold it to be self-evident that all persons are created equal, and that the thing that they have of life, of freedom, and of the right to be humanly fulfilled, they cannot be separated from, even though the 13th Amendment is going to say it's all right to just keep them in slavery if they've been, you know, duly convicted of a crime, because, again, political document. But that's not what the Declaration of Independence says. It says that you have an inalienable right to liberty. Even if you're locked up, you still have a right to freedom. You have a right to live, and you have a right to pursue the fullness of your humanity. It is a good document. And then it says that the only reason that we have government is to ensure these rights, and it says you only get a government that is legitimate by consent of the governed. I mean, I ain't mad at that story. I am all for teaching that story in second grade. Hell, I wish someone had taught that story to the January 6ers. So I am not mad with aspirational, foundational American stories. I think it is important to indicate that while Mr. Jefferson, and this is why I'm not for like, I'm just not Z generation, I'm just very, very X. So I just can't be like, oh, he was an enslaver, therefore no words he wrote mean anything. No, he was an enslaver and he wrote a damn good sentence, both at the same time. So it's really important for me to be able to say, he writes self-evident human equality while looking out the window at his children who are enslaved in intergenerational chattel bondage. It is not exactly self-evident in 1776 that all humans are created equal. But notice he didn't write, we take it to be self-evident that we get the good shit and they don't. It's just not what he wrote. He just didn't. And so when Dr. King stands there, right, when Dr. King stands there and says there's a promissory note and it has come back, right, insufficient funds, like, this is the promissory note. And this is important. If nobody ever promises it, if nobody ever writes it down, I mean, in Great Britain, they're like, no, these dudes are better. God said they get to be king, pay your taxes. It's different. I'm just saying, like, I mean, you know, we could be all down with the monarchy, ha ha, but I mean, there's nothing that's like, the people are self-evidently equal. So we have a check. Now it's a bad check. It's a bad check. But we keep going back, putting it in. It's like, you know, I had some rough years there financially, and I know I got to just keep $35 more, like, but just keep, I'm like, you can keep depositing it, it's never coming back, but we keep, all right. Glad y'all are with me. That's our other epistemological tool down there. If we had to name 3 people who were crucial to the founding of the United States, on the next slide, in most places, right? Then on the next slide, we'd say something like Washington, Jefferson, Madison, right? That's the kind of thing that happens in, you know, 5th grade. All right, next slide. And so when we hear answers like that, right, it activates our black girl skepticism. And then on our next slide, we ask the next question, what truths are missing? And so if we ask again that question, who were the 3, right? What if we answered the question, the Iroquois nations? Because let me tell you, we talk a lot about the French and how the French helped out, but without the Iroquois, we would definitely be at high tea right now. Do we talk about the enslaved for all the extraordinary words that I've just said about Thomas Jefferson? I mean, part of it, the words are coming from the people he is engaged with. You know, there's always I don't know how many other Southerners are in the room. Southern racism is a little different than like Indiana racism. It's different. Like we just be right up on each other, like right next to it, like talking to it, like it's a very intimate experience. Folks are in conversation. And Jefferson burned every letter because he was very much, right, in conversation with his enslaved people, many of whom were from the Hemings family. Notice how the Hemings have their own last name. That's because, you know, they're a whole family, they're a whole people. I encourage you to read the Hemings of Monticello. All right, next slide. So, and I promise I'm gonna go much faster, and now I'm gonna get us out of here because I'm already 7 minutes over, so I'm gonna go fast. But just exactly why I wanna come here. So then why does it matter when we start telling the story, right? 1619, 1776, and the next slide tells us it's because time matters. This was a critical aspect of the movement for civil rights in the mid-20th century, was to say we need freedom now, right? Think of Dr. King, we can't wait, right? Think of what the letter from a Birmingham jail is, right? It is about time. So on the next slide, if you don't know this brilliant black girl, Brittany Cooper, please take time to listen to her TED Talk about time. And she talks about time being stolen from black people. Folks are like, what are you talking about? And the next slide shows us that in the most recent years, time has literally been stolen. So look at the decline in life expectancy for everyone, right? But for white folks, there is a small decline in life expectancy. And for Latinos, because it's actually mostly men, and for black men, a dramatic decline in life expectancy. And the next slide will show you that in 2020, black men lost 3 years of life in 6 months. I'm gonna say that one more time. In 2020, black men lost 3 years of life in 6 months, and that's the COVID. That's the COVID effect, that's what happened. So now life expectancy has dropped by 3 years. My father is now that extraordinary man, he's in stage 4. He was, even before COVID started, it's not that I didn't already know there was a God, and it's not that God does not remind me, sometimes in ways that are annoying, but God is constantly reminding me of God's presence in my life. But that my father made it through COVID is such an extraordinary gift. And if you think, oh, 3 years, what's that? Think of the last 3 days you spent with a loved one. Think of the last 3 minutes that you spent with someone who passed. 3 years? If you go to the next slide, you'll just see these same data represented another way. And then if we're thinking about time, I want you to go to the next slide, because if we're thinking about time and race, then we have to think about the fact that George Floyd could still be living, even with the vile cruelty, even with the abuse. He could still in this moment be alive had it been 4 minutes. Had it been, I mean, if we had the time, I'd have us sit here for 9 minutes to think of how long 9 minutes is. If we sat here for 1 minute, we'd become uncomfortable with the silence. Why does it matter whether we talk about 1619 or 1776? Because time matters. And on the next slide, the only reason we know it was 9.5 minutes is because there was a storyteller. And who was the storyteller? Who was the storyteller? The storyteller was a little black girl. The storyteller, and I don't even know, I can't even fathom the agony. She keeps talking about her guilt about not intervening. What could she have done? We'd have lost her too. And we wouldn't have the evidence. We'd have lost her too, we would not have the evidence. And I want you to understand, it's not just about Derek Chauvin being convicted of murder. And I have to say, you know, I was on air from 2012 to 2016. We were covering televised Black death about every other week. I mean, that was a period that was horrifying. And then as a news person, when someone kills someone else, even on tape, even if you're like watching them kill someone else, if they haven't been convicted of murder, you cannot use that word. You have to use the word kill. He killed him, he shot him. It's interaction between them, and one of them ended up dead. Murder is a legal term, and if you use the word murder when there hasn't been a conviction of murder, you open yourself and your organization up to being sued, and then you're silenced, and then what's the point? Derek Chauvin is the first murderer I get to just call a murderer, right? But it's not really just about that. Do you know that with that videotape, that baby opened up a world of resources? Do you know that people got hired? Do you know colleges scrambled? Do you know that folks started on the next slide talking about Happy Juneteenth? Now, I would like to tell you, I wish y'all had shut up about that. I wish y'all had not told everybody about Juneteenth. We had already been taking it off. Didn't nobody have to give us it. We just took Juneteenth. They ain't know what the hell we was doing. We was just Juneteenth, and y'all went and told the white people in my office that got the day off. I'm like, the hell you got Juneteenth off for? What is happening? My mama came over with chicken. I was like, no, ma'am. This party is not for you. But you got to be able to tell race jokes in an interracial family, or you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. But more than anything, the Happy Juneteenth versus Happy Juneteenth is a story about time. What is the story? You see, what happens is, again, let's put who at the center. When we tell this story as a happy story, Happy Juneteenth, you're free. I want to go to the next slide because I want you to remember what Juneteenth is. Juneteenth is Black people joy, which means it is joy sorrow. It ain't just happiness. It's like something that's just happy, like, woo. Juneteenth isn't just happy. It's joy, right? It's sorrow. Because we were lied. We were free. Not that, again, we have an inalienable right to freedom, so we're always free. But we were legally free, and ain't nobody tell us. And if you don't think that there were people who died enslaved, right? So think again about those last 3 minutes with someone, those last 3 days, those last 3 weeks. We don't know how much was stolen. Juneteenth is lit. Don't tell me Happy Juneteenth. Hell no. There shouldn't have ever been a Juneteenth. Juneteenth is about you stealing time. So what difference does that make? Next slide. Again, it uncovers for us Black girl genius. So that when we see her, when they say her name, we are reminded that even if we don't agree with everything, by asking the question about time, she centers our story in a different way. All right, now I'm going so fast. All right, next slide. One more last story. I promise we just can't not do this. And this is a story, right. Here we go. All right. So here's the story, right? This is my favorite. This 2016. Oh, Lord, Donald Trump is racist and sexist and a bully. So first, like up until the election, it was he could never win. He's a racist rapist. I said, y'all said the man can't win the U.S. presidency because he's a racist rapist? Name 4 that weren't. Okay? Being a racist rapist was basically a precondition for becoming president of the United States for most of American history, right? It's just like, I'm not trying to be funny. It's just like straight up. So on the one hand, you had before 2016, oh my goodness, he'll never be president because he's a racist rapist. And then after, it was just like, oh, this is the worst thing that ever happened. We have a racist rapist president. And again, Black people were like, well, what is it, Tuesday? What are you saying? Next slide, because we were using our Black girl skepticism to ask the question, what truths are missing here? Because we know that on the next slide, even the best of us, right, the first time that racism is used in a Supreme Court finding It is in the Korematsu case because for all of the great that FDR did, we got to just go ahead and suck it up, put our big girl panties on, and acknowledge that the man also put the Japanese in American concentration camps just because of who they were. And certainly we had already known about the next one. And when we're real honest about ourselves, we knew about the next one too. I know, and it's rough. Because it wasn't that there wasn't some good. There was. But then there was also, and see, again, put the women at the center. Notice I'm not talking here about the crime bill. The crime bill is critical. This right here is the welfare bill. This is ending welfare as we know it, which also increases poverty as we know it. And so the next slide. When the notion that this language, right, was, yeah, I know. You gotta love page 6, they're crazy. But here's what we knew. Here's what our Black Girl Toolbox told us on the next slide. See, we already knew that the entire American economic system, right? So y'all understand the slave trade ends long before slavery. So how do you end up with enslaved people if you can't bring them anymore? Where do they come from? You grow them domestically. Where do you grow them? You grow them inside of Black women's bodies. We talk a lot about maternal health outcomes. We talk about double the rate of infant mortality, triple the rate of maternal mortality. This is a country, the only place where the first thing that an enslaved woman gives her child at birth is entrance into intergenerational chattel bondage. That my people bothered to love their children at all. Like I didn't end up in seminary because God called me to seminary per se. He did not call me to preach. God called me to seminary because I couldn't figure this out. Because I wanted to understand how you love, be cold in the winter love, knowing that in a moment, we talk family separation, right? We felt it in our bones. We felt it in our bones because it certainly wasn't the first time families were separated. We know that grabbing pussies is literally the stone on which America is built. Because it is the issue of Black women. It is what we create. It is what is born through our bodies that created the excess wealth that creates the whole country. We knew that pussy grabbing didn't start in 2016. We knew that was the whole story. So why does that matter? Because we have some Black girl genius. If you'd have asked us, if we were at the center, and I'm not saying like if you just go ask a Black woman, like, Michelle Obama, what do you think about the pussy grabbing? No, that's not what I mean. I mean, if you'd bothered to know our story at the center, if you started there, then you wouldn't have been shocked. Let's go forward about 2 slides, not to our friend Marion Sims, but the next one, because when the storyteller was, I'm just going to, whoop, no, sorry, back one. There you go. Just real quick, I'm going to do this. This is Elle magazine the day after the election. When you're staring down the barrel of your kids' formative years coinciding with a Trump presidency, it's hard not to flip half your Facebook friends a finger and move out of the country. I'm not ready to come together. I'm angry to know unequivocally that half the people in this country signed off on bigotry and cruelty last night, and there's no way to prevent my children from interacting with those people as, oh, your kids are going to interact with people who don't like them. Wait, your children are going to grow up with people in a country who despise them? Next slide. Yes, okay, next slide. Right. Because the question is, for all those who said, oh, I couldn't go to work the next day after the election, I said, did you go the day after the Zimmerman verdict? Because it begs the question, what were we already being told? Go forward, we're going to Go past till, I know, I have too many slides, which is where we are today, just because I want to make sure we just stop here for a moment. And I'm going to end us on this slide, even though I know they're like, but there's 30 more. But I'm going to end us on this slide because we're going to continue to be in conversation. But the decentering of Judge Jackson in her own confirmation hearings, like, you want to beat her up, go, do it. Get at her and the thoughts in her head. Let's do it, because I know she's ready. She's like, we're going to have thoughts, we're going to talk, so let's do that. But instead, we're not going to talk about her. We're not going to think about her. We're not going to engage her life. At one point, Ted Cruz literally was like, I'm sure you love your children, but since you're down with the pedophiles, and you know how when black people say, you better than me, they mean the opposite? She better than me, but she's actually, because no, sir. No, sir, some of the words you said in front of my mom. Sir, do you see my mom? Mr. Senator, you see that's my mama, and that's my baby girl child. And I know you couldn't, my husband couldn't be in, it would be a bad situation. Be a bad situation. James Perry has occasionally tried to come through the Twitter pages of people, like it's got it. And so on the one hand, I love her for it. I see her bearing up under it. I think of my grandmamas who loved the children they couldn't have. And yet I also wonder, how many years are we stealing from her? How clogged are her arteries becoming? How much is the cortisol rising? Are her ears ringing right now? Has her vision gotten blurry on the side? How much are we taking from her, an actual, real, living, breathing black woman genius? Because what? She wants to, okay, so can you slide through like literally 1,000 ones until we just get all the way down, because I don't want us to leave without these images. So keep going, go, all the way down to the first, down, yes, go Black Girls, go Elizabeth Eckford, go Vivian Malone, go Ella Baker, go Fannie Lou Hamer, go Diane Nash, keep going, yes, Stacey Abrams, hell yeah, girl, keep going, and then, reclaiming my time, yes, okay, keep going, yes, and I told y'all I had a lot of slides, keep going, wait. Okay. So why do we have the double Dutch? Because black girls are geniuses. Jump like this, which I hope Judge Jackson is doing. I hope she's going to catch a little cardio afterward, like, woo! That's great, it's good for your cardio. Black girls did not leave it there. If we're going to come together as a nation, we cannot just jump rope by ourselves and make ourselves healthier. You should feel free. Grab your rope, jump. Take a little jog. What's the spinny bike? The Peloton. Right? Fine. But here's what black girls figured out. You get 2 ropes, do the double Dutch. How many people does it take double Dutch? There's a minimum number of people. 3, that's right. Because even like the other kind where like you just do it on the doorknob, that's still, you know, like it's still, but that's not the double Dutch, right? So to double Dutch, you need a minimum of 3 people. Now, once you got 3 people, that's a whole community. That's a whole crowd. Heck, that's a church. 3 people. And to double Dutch, you must, like, you can't be working at odds, right? So, like with my brother who has been advancing the slides, like you got to look at each other, you got to be on rhythm, and the goal is not to harm the person who's jumping, it's to make them look great. Now, occasionally maybe you make fun of the light-skinned girl who's a little less rhythmic, and you might make it harder for her to jump in or out. I mean, sometimes that happens. Sometimes like, oh, white girl, mama. But for the most part, right, your goal is actually, right, to get the rhythm, to work with each other, to make it, and then, as the picture reminds us, once you got 3 people doing that and doing it well, more will watch. The brother is watching, there's a folks in the window. We have to double dutch with each other. We have to follow the Black Girl Genius model that says we don't just get well alone, we got to get well together. Thank you.
I know I'm not the only one who didn't want her to speed up or end, right? Let's give it up one more time for her. Amazing. And also, can we give it up for Grandma Rosa? I loved that part of the story. All right, so we are going to take a quick break right now. We want you to keep those questions in mind, and then we are going to reconvene with your questions, and we're going to do segment 2. I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say. Thank you.
Because I remember I met her when I went to, when some they did like a politics thing once, and I met her. And that young woman just
As we ask everyone to make it back to their seats, we'll get right started for our question and answer session. Again, to the audience that's on the virtual, we thank you so much for holding with us. We'll be started right now. We want to do a mic check for the lapel mics.
I mean, that's just like all the people, families, random people who can't get home, like, you know, whoever. All right, we're testing the mic. Let's see. I don't know, where did the mic go? Oh, it's not even with us anymore. Here we go. All right. Better on the mic? Can you all hear? Great.
Test, test. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. Our hostess is there. Okay. So, well, I guess I will start by saying you are amazing. I'm so scholarly black girl crushing right now. And so I'm Khalila Shabazz, and I work here at the university, and personally have used your work. This is literally my book from back in the day.
See, and that's how a book is supposed to look. It's
You
written
know,
on,
it's
got
got
the
some
little
notes
tabs.
and
That's what I'm
tabs.
for, yes.
And some thumb things, all kind of stuff. And, you know, I'm so honored to be able to have a conversation and start a conversation with you and welcome questions from the audience. So you gave us an amazing toolbox. And I was thinking, you know, about those tools, you know, that skepticism, which I think naturally a lot of us black girls have, talking about the truths that are missing, and then that black girl genius. And so one of the first thoughts I had was, what about the black women who feel like that toolbox is too heavy to unpack, to carry, to open? How do you help us realize the value of the toolbox so that we can then begin to unfold it?
it's so interesting that you start there. My oldest daughter is 20, and she's a college sophomore. And she came home last night. She just like drove home because she's just 2 hours away. She'd previously been in college way out in California, and so coming home was like a big dramatic thing. Anytime she wanted to come, she just drove home. But, you know, she's Z-Gen, so I knew she was just home. Something was, right, it's just popping around the house, eating whatever for a while, and it starts coming out. My father must have experienced this with us as well, just this idea of rearing your children with so much more material privilege than what you had. And so, you know, this is a kid who just has had much more access. She's traveled. She's just done, you know, all the things you want to do as a parent. But I think it also means, like, she went to college and wanted to just, like, go to college and just live her life. Just, like, go and be friends with whoever. And I think she wasn't quite ready for what race was going to mean for her as she became a young woman. Not that there are people on campus yelling the N-word at her, not that, but the heaviness. Like, oh, I have this roommate that I really like, but then this thing happened and I don't know how to navigate. Or I like this boy, he doesn't see me, and I think that's because he's a white boy from North Carolina, and like my little soul is like jumping. I'm like, okay, let's, you know, talk this through. And I realized how much I thought we had given her the arm strength to carry the toolbox, but that it probably felt too heavy to me at one point. I probably remember it less now. So I guess part of what I'd say is I'm kind of glad it's too heavy. I almost appreciate that instead of her just saying, to quote Zora Neale Hurston, well, I'm the mule of the world, so go ahead and, you know, just add the next one, which I think is undoubtedly what my grandmother thought, and my older sister, who is our caretaker in our family of everyone, is just like, oh, you got a problem, hand that, hand it. And I suppose there's a part of me that is happy that my daughter's like, don't hand me that, I can't carry that. But I want her to know that she could carry it if she had to. Maybe it's a funny place to find inspiration, but the people of Ukraine have got me feeling a kind of way right now, because I appreciate that they were just like living, and they was being like middle class, and they was doing their thing. But then Putin came, and they were like, oh, yeah, we got something for you. And I mean, like, there's a part of me that appreciates the level of sacrifice, right, that I can see in them even as Eastern Europeans. Whether or not they would be able to see it in me, right, irrelevant. I can see the human empathy that I have. I want her to know that if she has to, she could pick it up. So I guess what I'd say then to that, walking all the way around, is it is too heavy for one person to carry. It will crush you. It does crush us. Like it does. It actually is too heavy, right? It does crush us. And the only way we survive it is collectively. And not just in a like theoretical sense, like in a the Miss USA baby who leapt from that building, the Wake Forest law. I sat next to her on a plane once when we were coming back. She was just like, you know, she's a beauty queen. Just light, just pouring off of her. How was she that alone? How was she, not that many of us have walked up to the edge, looked over it, thought about how long the fall would be, metaphorically or actually. But it is sometimes just the burdens that pull us back. Oh shit, if I jump, who's gonna feed the cat? Who's gonna take the baby to school tomorrow? Who, everybody's like, yeah, I'm alive today because visa, and I don't want to leave my mama with the student loans because that would be wrong, right? So I think part of what I mean by so alone is like, as much as the burden can be burden, it's also sometimes the thing that pulls us back because we're connected. So when we're connected, connection is burden. Connection is like, I got 8 siblings, and it's Sunday, and I got to call every single one of them. All right, let's, but also it's Lent. Like somebody just asked me to do something on a Sunday. I was like, oh, it's Lent, baby. Call me after Easter. I can't, we're going to be in church every Sunday. And I would rather be asleep. I would rather not call all the siblings. Certainly rather not feed the cat, which I only have because the 8-year-old determined she wanted a cat. But God bless you. But I don't know how long the cat gonna be for the house, but it's in the house right now because I love the baby. But sometimes that is literally what turns you around off the edge. So I want us to see our burdens as also our connections. And I guess part of what terrorizes and terrifies me is that baby didn't even have a burden that turned her back around. So I don't want us to leave each other, even if you feel like you're being a burden to each other. Know that in being a burden to each other, it may be because you got chapter meeting to go to on Tuesday that will turn you back around off the ledge. And so I want us to lean hard on each other, even when sometimes we either don't want to because we want to be too strong, or because we're too competitive, or because we're trying to protect the other by not leaning. I want us to lean hard on each other, because that's the one part of the toolbox I didn't talk specifically about, which is that we are each other's tool.
Yeah, one of the other thoughts that I had was when you were talking about the missing pieces, or that image, and I kept seeing the missing piece and the truths that are missing. For Black women, sometimes we don't recognize those as missing truths because that's just our everyday life. So how do you help us understand, or what are the missing truths that we need to say, oh no, that is a missing truth, I need to tell that, and empower us and each other to center those truths, because we hardly want to center ourselves.
At all. But that's what I love about storytelling. So when I think about teaching, I always feel like my job in teaching isn't to give you something you've never heard before. It's actually to say something that when you hear it, you're like, oh, I already knew that, right? Like, so I already knew that, I just didn't quite know how to know it, right? So sometimes I'll talk about the wealth gap. And it's one thing, you see the wealth gap, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, well, we need to do something about that. We need to earn more money. We need to own our own businesses. We need to, invest in property. All wonderful things to do. We absolutely should do those things, for sure. It also won't close the wealth gap, right? It will improve your life. It will maybe even improve your individual wealth, but it won't close the wealth gap, right? Because the wealth gap is baked into the system. So sometimes we're like, what does that mean, baked into this? Like, I can go earn some more money and do better? So remember that investment in human capital, right? After World War II. So Grandma Rosa, in addition to everything else, so we go back to Grandma Rosa and Grandma Ann, right? So Grandma Rosa, because she's a domestic worker, is ineligible for, she's not covered by OSHA, right? Occupational safety, right? She's also not covered by Social Security, right? So these boys go off, they get the PhDs, right? They get the big jobs. So we're just going to call it $100,000 because that just seems like a lot of money. All right, so go make $100,000. Great, that's a lot of money. Great things. Okay, but your mama doesn't have Social Security. All right, so you got $100,000 in your household, right? My big money, right? Got the big money. But grandma doesn't have Social Security, and she's got arthritis, so at some point she must stop working. So who's going to take care of her? Now, maybe she owns the home. She did. She owned the house on Body. But think about Black folks who buy a thing. That is one place you go buy yourself. Go bring it home to your neighborhood. Because then a whole bunch of us. I like to say, we bought a big house with you got acres because I'm country. And so people come to me, it's like, oh, well, no, Miss Perry not here. She out. I don't want to think I own the house because I'm trying to keep my property. No. Me and my husband we're looking after the place till the fairies come back. Sick. I mean, I don't really do that. I think they know that I live there. But it's like, right? So we buy a thing and we make it less valuable by owning it, right? So this is a different thing. So if Grandma Ann And if they had retirement, if they had Social Security, when they retired, when they didn't work, my mama didn't make $100,000, but she also didn't have to pay for her mama back. Also, right, in my family of 5, as in my father's, there's one sibling, you know, who has challenges with addictions, and there isn't money for some big fancy, you know, rehab. So you know where black boys with addiction problems go, that's jail. So even though they're brilliant and great and wonderful and things, they're never going to work in quite the same way. So you're paying out money back for your mama, and then you're paying money forward, right? Because maybe your brother has a kid who is really great and you want to send them to camp. So now your $100,000 is going back. It's also going both to your kids, and because your neighborhood may be a great neighborhood, but because it's also a neighborhood black folks bought into, the school, public schools might not be great, so you're also probably paying a private school tuition that may be like Catholic school, so not quite like private school, but still private school. So now your $100K is going, right, not just to your mortgage, and not just to your mama, and not just to your brother and to your brother's kid, who's your nephew, you're gonna pay for camp for, and for your kid for the, you know, Catholic school. Okay, and then, I mean, you're gonna go work probably with white people, so you have to hair and fix nails, because you can't just wander up in there like
we are.
You might even be like, because I'm real country, so I would just like kind of wander around the earth, but you can't because, you know, you can't. So then you're consuming, you're conspicuously consuming so as to not get shot at work, okay? And then, right, then the whole way you got to college was student loans, and so you owe. The reason you can't close the wealth gap is because you're structurally positioned differently. So I said all that to say, so how do you tell people a story? So everybody already knows that. Every piece of what I just told you already know. But unless we put it together in that particular way, you're not like, oh, got it. I'm not failing. I'm not messing up. My $100,000 is going 10 more places. So when you watch the Today Show and she's like, put aside a smuggity muggity of your schmuggity muggity. And you're like, how could I possibly? And so black folks made up all kinds of tricky, fabulous ways to do this. We called it tithing. And tithing is like how you save your 10%. Give that over here to the community-based organization called the church, right? So we tithe to the church, which actually is a real, and black folks double tithe, and then pass the plate. Why? Because we're literally taxing ourselves in order to create community, because that's what tax is, right? So you tax in order to provide health care, in order to provide housing, in order to provide transportation, in order to provide elder care. And how do we do it? We tax through the voluntary association that is the church. And yet, and still, we can't catch up. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't do all those things. You absolutely should, but you also should not feel guilty when you see that wealth gap continue to grow, because your $100,000 just did what other people's $400,000 does. So for me, that's our goal, is that what the college education does, what the moment on TV, what I try to do on the radio show now. So I don't know if we're on in Indianapolis, but the takeaway is daily, Monday through Friday. I don't know if we're on Indianapolis Public Radio or not, but I am on every day on the takeaway. And, you know, what we're trying to do is tell the story. So, like, we've been talking about Judge Jackson, and it's like, okay, how do we tell this story, not get fired, right? Be clear, but also make people feel seen. Make people who are watching, who are like, this don't feel right, my stomach is turning. Why is my stomach turning? Is this normal? And so for me, that's it. The whole goal isn't to tell people something they don't know. It's to use authority, position, privilege, access, to just remind people that they already know it, and particularly to remind black women, women of color, people who are disabled, girls, the girl inside of us, like, no, you do know that. Like, when you see Holly, Senator Holly repeatedly asking those questions about child porn and wanting to talk about it, like, you already know you wouldn't leave your child around him. Because I don't know no people who aren't pedophiles who want to talk about it. Who want to, like, let's talk about it some more. Oh, I know we talked about it some more. Let's talk about it again. Everyone I know who's not a pedophile is very uncomfortable with it. Like, Judge Jackson was clearly nauseous. She was like, good night. I do not want to talk about this. You can see it welling. You can see the fear. And anybody who's just like, let's talk about child porn, you already, so this is me affirming to you, yep. If someone is in that space and real interested in talking about child pornography, then we don't let our babies go by that house. And it's okay for us to affirm to each other, right? Not to tell you something you don't know, but to actually, so for me, but that's because I'm a storyteller. No, let me just say, lawyers are going to do that justice work differently, right? The law in me. So lawyers are going to do that justice work differently. Engineers are going to do that justice work differently. Reverend Barber's going to come, and he's going to do that justice work a little differently, because he's both going to reveal what you know, he's going to remind you what God had already told you, and he's going to tell you to put your shoes on and come walk with him somewhere. I ain't gonna ask you to go nowhere. It'd be great if you tune into the takeaway, but you don't have to follow me anywhere. But you should follow Reverend Barber wherever he says to go.
Got it. Thank you. So we also want to provide an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. There's a mic on either side, so please feel free to step forward if you do have a question. We know our virtual audience, you can use the chat feature and submit your question, and we'll make sure to get that one posed as well.
I have a question for you.
You have a question for me?
Yeah, I'm a journalist about that. Okay. You said I work here at the university. Tell me what you do here.
So I serve as my title is the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And my work really involves making sure that the students who are here, the minoritized students, have what they need in order to be successful. My personal mantra is to make sure that our students, all of our students, graduate whole, W-H-O-L-E. Because I realize that many of our students, particularly our Black students, come in, society has broken them, and the higher ed institution either continues to break them or breaks them that first break. And so I really mission to make sure that our Black students, our Latinx students, our students with disabilities, our LGBTQ plus students, our international students really know their value here. They get the tools that they need to be successful, and they feel that they belong.
Do you have the resources you need to ensure that these students can be whole?
So, you know, my boss is in the room.
I figured.
And
let me ask you.
And my boss
let me ask you.
I'll tell you.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you. She'll tell you probably too. So the short answer is no. You know, there are never enough resources to service, you know, all of the things that our students experience. We try our best, and we do, to me, I know the team that I work with in the Multicultural Center and the LGBTQ plus center do jump backwards to serve students and to support students. And so we, you know, like those, you know, 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, you know, we figure it out, but we can always use more resources.
Okay.
Oh,
great.
we have a
'Cause I
question.
would keep going. I have all of them.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We brought some young people here, and particularly boys,
Yes.
and so they probably really don't know why they're here. But I wanted them to come just to start seeing how life is and things are. And so, what would be, in your opinion, a takeaway? What would be a takeaway for them that you would think would be helpful for them?
Would the young men be willing to stand up and say their names and say one thing about themselves, like either how old they are or what grade they're in, or?
All right.
Go ahead and stand up, guys. Stand up.
He popped up.
William, stand up.
Tell us your name and either what grade you're in or how old you are.
Give him a microphone, please.
Yeah, sorry, we're going to bring you the mic.
And so one of the things that they're serious about is technology.
My name is Sincere, and I'm a junior, and I go to Riverside High School.
My name is William, but I'm not in school right now.
Okay. All right, William.
My name is Maurice. I go to Purdue Polytechnic High School, and I'm a junior.
My name is Kemp Jones. I'm a freshman in Heron High School.
I'm 72 years old, and I want to get my law degree.
Yes! Look, young men or young women, and I would very much welcome a response to that question as well from any elders in our audience, in our community, particularly those who have raised boy children. So I will say I'm the youngest of a family of 5. There's only one though in our family who is a brother, and everybody else, we're a girl family. I have girls. I have an extraordinary husband who is the oldest brother of 4 brothers, and I have learned a lot in being married to him about how different girl families are from boy families in terms of just the Thanksgiving energy. But I will give you this one takeaway, and then welcome others. I think the only thing I want you to know from me is that I love you. And I don't know you, and I love you. And you matter. And you matter whether or not you make straight A's or you're not in school right now. You matter if you have never so much as had more than a glass of water, or if you messed up and did some drugs that you're now wishing you didn't do, or maybe you did some drugs that you wish you were doing right now. Nonetheless, I love you. If you have made mistakes, or if you haven't even had a chance to make mistakes yet, I promise you will. And what I will say is our job is supposed to be to love the totality of who you are and give you room to make mistakes. And sometimes what will happen is that as adults who are terrified for you in the world, because we know that most of the world does not love you, and we know that most of the world would think that you are a threat when in fact the world is a threat to you, that sometimes what we will do is we will set all kinds of rules and restrictions, and we will yell at you, we will holler, and you have to know that is our fear and our love. And it's hard to hear that when you're being hollered at, but I promise you it is our fear and our love. But you shouldn't let our fear limit you. You should let our love raise you up, because I promise you we love you. I promise you that you are worth anything in the world. I promise you don't have to do violence to a woman to prove that you are great. I promise that you do not need to do violence to another black boy or man to prove that you are great, that you simply are great and loved and have a right to make mistakes and to live in the aftermath of the mistakes that you make, and to live with our arms around you because we genuinely love you. And try to drink a lot of water and not do drugs. For real. It will make for a much better pathway.
Bravo, Soror, bravo, for bringing a sense of the unity that has to be. And I love the double Dutch concept. The picture does speak 1,000 words. So what ingredients does it take for us as a people to get out of our way, out of our sense of self-hatred, out of our sense of jealousy, out of our sense of entitlement, out of our sense of whatever's in the way, to come together with a double Dutch mentality and work together to bring unity, to bring community, to bring the love, to bring the uplifting, the inspiration that we are as a people. And we come from kings and queens. We are the royalty that has stood for years and years, and yet we still rise in this madness that's called America. So what is the ingredients to pursue and capitalize on a double Dutch concept that encaptures all of us up in it?
I'm reminded that part of what Nicole Hammond-Jones does by taking us back to 1619 is to generate humility for us. I know for sure that if this was simply a solvable problem by being smart enough, capable enough, insightful enough, hardworking enough, that, Anna Julia Cooper would have solved it for me because she wanted to, right? Anna tried to solve it for us. I know that Ida Wells would have solved it for us because she wanted to, she tried to. I know that I am not, Fannie Lou Hamer is better than me. She is. She's better than me. She's smarter. She's more hard work. So if it was just solvable, right, by being, and Ida was also fancy. She was if it was just about being fancy or smart or capable or insightful or strategic, it'd be done because my people have never not worked on it, right? The story is not always told that way. It's told as though we were okay with being, chattel, but there's no point at which we're not running, we're not leaving, we're not breaking stuff. And then even more amazing in a certain way, we're sitting there enslaved and we're creating things, right? So who is America's greatest inventor? And you'll hear things like Thomas Edison or no, George Washington Carver, right? And what does it mean that people who had no access to the thing, right? What does it mean that that indigenous and enslaved people created modern agriculture that they couldn't even eat the fruits of? We are really, so if it was just that, it would be done, right? So the first thing I'd say is I can't know because I know that my ancestors would have handed me a fixed world if it was easily fixable. So I do figure humility is part of it. I will say that I have, over the course of the past 15 years in my relationship and marriage with my husband, been exploring what it means to be loved in a way by another human that I didn't ever think was possible. I'm sure probably my parents loved me that way, but they're rough. They're from the 40s, so they're I grew up with my father genuinely, regularly saying to me, nobody cares how you feel except your mama, and she probably cares a lot less than you think, right? It's a different time. My little Zijan baby would actually melt if someone said that to her. But I'm married to this man who is a manifestation of God's love in my life. It doesn't mean he's perfect, and Lord knows he won't pick his socks up. But it is there. It's like you didn't even see them there.
They don't.
Sorry. It's it's there. Okay. But I have been learning from him how to do better on the question of what it means to say, I love another adult person in the world, right? So not a child, not even the people in theory, right? The people in theory are very easy to love. The people, when you actually meet them, harder to love. And so one of the things I've been learning from my marriage has been, this is what it looks like when you actually do see somebody's dirty socks, and you're like, that's cool, we down, let's go, where are we going next? So I do think part of it is humility, that we're not going to solve it in our lifetimes, because it would have probably already been solved, that we're just in the struggle, right? Struggle continues, so we pick the struggle up. That loving one another means a lot of forgiving all the time. And usually forgiving them for things that aren't even that, I have to forgive him every day for how he loads the dishwasher. And that's not even a real thing to forgive someone over. Yeah. But I'm looking out at my sorors, and we've been in relationship with each other, in sorority, in church, in neighborhood, where we have to forgive each other for stuff that isn't really a thing to forgive somebody for. But you're she knows dinner is at 7, and she called me at 7 every night. And really, really practicing what it means to look at people with soft eyes instead of harsh ones, and to just have no beef with being wrong. And like, or even worse, being actually right, but they don't know you right, and you just got to just live with being right all the time, even though it's not acknowledged, which is some beef. Like that's harder than just being wrong. So I would say the humility around we can't get it all fixed, the looking at each other with soft eyes, and really just forgiving. And then the last, I think for me, is then also giving that back to myself. I spent a lot of years saying I don't believe in self-care. I only believe in squad care. So what I would say is, you know, I believe in self-maintenance, take a shower, whatever, but like self-care, if I'm ill enough or sad enough that I need care, I can't do it for myself. Somebody else has to, right? So that was very ex-gen of me. And there's a part of me that believes that. You still need squad. But I have gotten better at believing that actually no, even at the worst, there is still a part of it that is my responsibility to care for myself. I gotta choose the water over this, I just have the soda right now. But I have to choose the water more often. I just have to go to bed. There are 25 more emails. There are, and even if I answered them, there'd be 25 more emails. So I just have to go to bed. And I can't say, oh, I'm sorry. I can't send I'm sorry, I have to go to bed. I just have to just freaking go to bed. Because they just are like, I realized this after we got the property, and I would be out on the property, and I would be working because I love the farming, and I'm like in the dirt, and I would pee on myself. I'm sorry. But I would literally be so in the work that I would forget to use the restroom. People can do a lot of things for you. They can DoorDash. They can bring you some water out there, but only you can take yourself to the bathroom. And if you are just going to keep working like a lunatic, literally just out there like, I just have to dig this last week. Oh, no. That was when I realized I had gone too far. When I did not stop to use the restroom. And so only I can put myself to bed, just like I would do to my babies when they're just losing their minds, and then just like, ooh, baby, bedtime. So I have to put myself to bed. I have to take myself to the restroom. I have to pour myself a glass of water at the most basic, even if I need you to do some loving of me. I got to love other people with a whole lot of forgiveness, and I got to be super humble about the fact that no matter how smart and great and cool I am, and no matter how great and smart and cool all my girls are, we're still probably not going to hand a fixed world to our children. And then I got to actually be willing to play. If I don't actually ever double dutch, then we can't build it together. If we don't ever play together, if we don't ever just have some fun, double dutch is not work. It is fun. It is actually fun, even though your heart is beating out. And so we got to have some kind of fun together. Something like, my new chair of my gender studies department has this color in faculty meeting. We were all like, you are crazy, lady. But then we were like, coloring. She's a black woman, feminist. She was like, we're going to color in faculty meetings. And faculty meetings got better because we were having fun with each other. And that's all I got.
That's awesome. Let's see if he wants.
Okay, I think I see 3 final questions, and then I want to toss it back to Dr. Shabazz to close us out. But there's 2 questions over here, and I see 1 over there. So that'll be the final 3 questions from the audience, and then Dr. Shabazz will close this segment out for us.
I will answer faster. I'm sorry.
Okay, Dr. Harris-Perry, thank you for joining us this evening. Before this started, I had written down several questions, and of course, you answered them all except one.
I said the same thing.
I've noticed a phenomena since COVID with our teenage kids, especially our girls. I have several granddaughters, and the issue has been a level of anger that I've never seen before. I mean, kids can be impudent, but there's a level of anger that is new to me. And if you have an idea of the source or how to get around it or how to deal with teenage girls, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, the teenage, that was, yeah, so some of it is irrational, right? I mean, when we're talking about teenagers, and I don't mean irrational I just mean it's literally biological, right? So some of it, some of it is anger that just is emerging from hormones and change and just all the things, right? But one I'd say, aren't you mad? I'm very angry right now. I'm extremely angry. I mean, this Supreme Court confirmation hearing had me, I mean, I am very angry. But I'm also old enough that I have a lot of tools. I know how to observe my anger. Like I can, take my anger out and sit it over here and look at it and think about it. I can contextualize my anger. I can ask myself the question, why am I, and still even I might break a plate, right? Or I might, be grumpy, sometimes the cat catches a little of the anger, right? Because, and the cat's just being a cat, but I just don't like cats, and there's a cat in my house. And so, right, so I know, we tell how much I don't like the cat. So I'm very angry, right, at the world, and so sometimes the vulnerable thing catches it, right? So one thing I'll say is some of it is irrational, just, youthfulness. But some of it is actually very real and reasonable anger, right? The whole world changed for no reason. It just, like, one day there was the world, and the next day the world went away, and people got locked up into spaces where they couldn't physically move around, they couldn't engage each other, and then all these tools that you're, like, always building cognitively as a teenager of, like, how the world works and how things just stopped getting built. And then somebody told you to go look at a computer all day. And I don't know if you've been on the computer world, but the internet world is a cesspool of horror. I mean, it is a terrible place. The more I look at my phone, the angrier I am on any given day. It is either images and images and images of people who are supposedly your age, who seem to have so much more and so much better, and their lives are just so much better, or it is white supremacy, child porn, and death. Like, for real, like, that is what is happening all the time. It's just like a diet of, like, if you just ate trash all day, and then you can't even, like, go outside, and then, so the one thing I'll say is, if they're expressing their anger to you, God bless you, it means they believe they're safe with you. Which, I know, it's like, but they might not be, but, okay. Slam that door one more time, see if you're still safe. But they actually are, right? They know that they can, the very fact that they're acting out is less about disrespecting you and actually a way of saying, I am so frustrated and angry at the world, but you seem to love me unconditionally. So because I bet they don't act out in front of people who they don't feel safe around. So it's actually an indication of their belief about you being a relatively safe. So part of what I'd say is, we try to respond to that by making more room for safety while still setting limits. So, Parker, you can be mad as you want, you slam whatever you want, but not in this part of my home where the nice stuff is. You can take that madness upstairs. And sometimes, like putting the children to sleep, I know that phone is actually torturing you. You think you need that phone. But I know that the phone is actually feeding your anger. So you're going to be mad at me, but you're going to give me the phone. You're going to hand it to me now. But the imposed digital diets, it's just like any other diet. For like a day and a half, man, when you're coming down off that digital, I suggest maybe just actually lock them in the room for that day and a half. But I promise you, if there's, and it can be like, we just have a couple of hours every evening in our household. You do what you want. You don't even have to be around us, but it's just a digital diet, 2 hours. And so, because even the 8-year-old be like, so because we know it's actually helping to feed their anger. But then the last thing I'll say is some of what they're mad about is the world. And we should talk to them about it. And not, let me say it differently. We should listen to them about it. We should probably not say, oh, don't worry, or oh, I know the answer, or oh, I had it so much worse. We should just be like, this seems like a lot. Like, this seems like a lot. How are you feeling about the fact that school is not a normal thing? Or, so everyone is being shot now. And they may not even be able to reasonably or rationally talk to you. I will say girls are better at talking. With my nephew, we had to go do a thing. So like, hey, let's go paint that wall. Oh no, I don't even care what color it is. Let's just paint that wall and see if words come out of the front of your face, please, right? Or let's dig this hole over. Like, I couldn't get the boy to talk to me unless we were doing a thing. But if we were doing a thing, then the boy would say words. But the girl would just like literally just sit there and be like, I have words to say.
We got lots to say.
Unto you, and it was really just about being still enough to let. So those are the things. Impose some of the restrictions on the things that are making them crazy, even if they don't realize it. Give them lots of room to be safely angry around you, so they don't have to go be angry in a world where they're not safe. And then acknowledge and actually listen to some of the things that are making them angry.
Great question.
Good evening. My name is Mia Baird. I'm a board member for Steward Speakers. And my question, can you hear me? My name is Mia Baird. I'm a board member for Steward Speakers. So thank you again for being here. And my question is, as a young black woman who is aware that I don't have all the tools in my toolbox, but is struggling with getting tools to put in my toolbox from other black women, what would you say to that?
Read it all. You know, what's incredible is we really did write it down, and nobody teaches it, and it takes us a really long time to find ourselves in all the reading, but when you find yourself, it's so. This is my problem. I'm a college professor. It is my genuine belief that the right syllabus is going to save the world. If we all just do the right reading, it'll save the world. So I am undoubtedly going too far on this, because that's just going to be my bias, is do the reading. But that said, I am a big fan of the reading because I am constantly amazed to discover I didn't discover this problem. You know, Sister Constance Baker Motley was working on this problem in '64, and Pauli Murray. I mean, y'all want to, the intersection of black womanhood, transgender identity, queer identity, Episcopal priest, writing letters to Eleanor Roosevelt like, ma'am, do better. I mean, Pauli Murray. So for me, where I started the reading, not that I hadn't been doing some, but like really got intentional about reading black women. I just started in North Carolina, right? So I went to college and grad school in North Carolina. I started with black North Carolina women. So that's Anna Julia Cooper, that's Pauli Murray, right? And I just started building, and then they'll tell you, right? They will tell you where else to go. So I would say start with whatever legacy it is, whether so if you're an engineer, start with like black engineering, women, or if, I know this sounds crazy, even start with like the children's books, because sometimes the children's books will just tell you the stories about, the trailblazers that nobody taught us. So like go buy, don't buy the Anti-Racist Baby, because Ted Cruz was wrong for what he did. Ted Cruz was wrong for what he did, but Anti-Racist Baby is a crazy title, and babies are not racist or anti-racist, they are babies, but Ted Cruz was still wrong. So I'm not talking about that book. I'm just talking about the books that are like, marking the places of black sheroes, even when it's like a kid's book, right, but a historical fiction kid's book, kind of get into those, build from there, and just start wherever like you think you might find yourself. So, black lawyers, black engineers, black women, astronauts. And again, for me, it was like starting in North Carolina and then going out from there. So to me, that is like, I bet you will find many of the tools there. And then the other thing I will say is, as much as the internet is an awful, terrible, horrible cesspool of evil and white supremacy, there's also a lot of cool stuff on there, because black women make all the things on the internet place that are not the cesspool place. So I also, this is part of like the COVID thing. So now I go to like 4 churches. I don't go to all of them all the time. I have my actual church. But but my community does not have the black lady-led churches. We're a little southern for that. So, but I like the black lady-led churches. So there's on Facebook. So I go and I hang out and learn in those spaces, right? And the nice nice thing about those spaces is, as much as I do want us to have commitments to each other that force us to be a little bit burdensome on each other, it's also nice to have some spaces that are not so burdensome. So like the digital spaces allow me to pop in, grab tools, come out, and I try to create things also on the internet so other people can use me as a tool, right? But so that's where I'd say do the readings, and then find the communities. Sometimes they will be physical communities, you and all your sorors dressed in red out in the space. And other times it will be digital communities, but it is the one good thing that's happening there is that we're doing a lot of making. And if you do that, your algorithms will be better, and you will get less horror, right? So the more there's like, hey, Black girl space, like go look at Black girl yoga, then what'll happen is that the evil racist algorithms will hand you lovely things. The problem with watching the Derek Chauvin murdering George Floyd is then it showed, like, just so you all understand how the algorithms work, right? The problem is on the one hand, we want to bear witness to it, but once we bear witness to it digitally, then it, like literally this, I just want to acknowledge that this is happening because we were trying to find out what was going on with this child porn discourse that was going on in the Senate. They literally have all of us now in an algorithm that is going to be very ugly for a while. Because like if you were just like, wait a minute, what? And you just were like trying to look it up, then what happens is it starts showing you those things. So go spend some really good time, and it will begin to give you that as well.
Thank you.
So I feel you kind of went into what I'm asking you when it was about anger, but my specific question is on strategies to give to parents. I'm raising a 9 and 10-year-old girl where I can't control what happens to them when they walk out that door. But how do I combat these negative influence, not only from what walks out the door, but from social media, specifically TikTok and YouTube? Right now, they're glorifying some of those negative stereotypes that I'm trying to teach her not to buy into. And they're glorifying it in a way, they're trying to show her that she can live this life that is not obtainable for her. So how do I begin to reset some of those pathways for her, some of those narratives for her, so that her generation that's coming up doesn't have to lean and bend into this crookedness, but can just start to stand up straight and really begin to heal some of those things, some of those wounds that we are already struggling with.
So again, if we had answered, like, right, here's what you do to make your 9-year-old great. So one book, to do the reading, one book I love, I don't know if you remember Marley Diaz. She did the 1,000 Black Girl books. This was maybe back in like 2014 or 2015. She was like 11 years old. She was kind of on all the like morning shows and stuff because she started an effort to get 1,000 Black girl books for public libraries. And they ended up with like 14,000 or something, right? And then Marley just kept being great. Like Marley actually just got into college recently. She's about to graduate from high school, but she went to the White House. She's just great. Well, her mother, Janice Johnson Diaz, has written a book, and I love her book so much. And now it has just flown out of my head. So Marley's book, the girl's book, is Janice Johnson Diaz's book is How to Raise Change-Making. Oh, that's the subtitle. What is the? It's going to come to me.
Somebody's looking it up.
Yes,
I'm sure.
It's How to Raise Joyful Change-Making Girls is the subtitle, but why can I not? So I love her parenting book. I love Jenny's personally. Parent Like It Matters. Yes. Parent Like It Matters. And she talks about, this isn't just like in theory, like Janice put together like a whole strategy. She's got a whole thing together. It's sort of half autobiography about her own experiences. And she's very much not like, I am the bougie mom who will tell you what. She came from some situations. And she was very intentional as a parent. And so I love her book. I love the voice in it. So that's like just the first like resource. Second resource I'll say is I'm a big believer in Freedom School. I love Freedom School. If you have Freedom School in your community, just force your baby to go to Freedom School one summer, and then they can go again the next summer. Because Freedom School usually is either through churches or through community centers. This is Marian Wright Edelman's Children's Defense Fund. But if it's called a Freedom School, then it is using Freedom School curriculum, and the Freedom School curriculum does not play. Not only will it make sure that the babies do the reading, right, and not only do we halt summer learning loss, our children come back after 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks in Freedom School with improved learning, like they have big strides, but it's not like a Freedom School. We don't yell at our kids, we yell with our kids. So every morning starts with Harambe, and like there's like all, and the thing is, because anything you resist persists, so it is both like traditional and music from the continent, but it's also like trap music, like all together, like it's all the things. But like you're at school and like you spend the first 30 minutes, like you get it out. Like so instead of telling children when they show up, sit down, be still, it's like, all right, children, come in, let's dance, let's get it out, and then you sing the song. It becomes part of your soul. And once you have gone to Freedom School a couple summers, you can't help yourself except that you will sing this song whenever you show up in bad times, because it will just exist inside of you. And so then you will know how to build yourself. And so we do that with the babies. So and usually they are free or very low cost. I cannot tell you how much I believe in Freedom School. We ran a Freedom School at Wake Forest. If elders are looking for a thing to do in community that can change the lives of young people, it is expensive for us because you have to buy the curriculum, and you get servant leader interns, and they go sometimes to Haley Farm and they get the training because this is not a game. Like Freedom School will change your situation. So buying Janice's book, I believe in Freedom School, and then the last thing is just what we resist persists. So on the one hand, I think it's extremely important that we are always saying what our values are. Like in this house, we believe this, this, and this. But I also think, the baby's they're gonna see it. The ticking and the talking is gonna tick and talk. And so critical media literacy for me is the thing. So I do believe in digital diets. I do believe you have to put it down. I do believe it's always in your eye. You can't be critical. But I also think it can't be, you never have a TikTok. You never have an Instagram, right? There just are best ways to do it, right? There's ways for you, and still won't make everything safe, right? But there are ways that you do it, and then you have the conversation. So like TikTok is confusing to me, but the child and I would look at the TikToks and we're like, okay, so what do you think is happening there, right? So instead of just, no, that's not, like, well, how do you think that happened? What is the story that's trying to tell? What do you see when you look at that? And even if they're giving you crazy bad answers, instead of like judging the crazy bad answer, like trying to, and again, I'm a teacher, so I can't help myself. Like, here's your assignment. Let's think about your TikTok, right? That will also take some of the joy out of TikTok, which will make it less interesting because you're like, let's do the TikTok together. And they're like, oh my God, I'd rather just, could we play Monopoly instead? So those are my three things, is don't try to end the thing that they're understanding, right? Have the critical, read Janice's book, and connect with Freedom School, because I'm a big fan of Freedom School.
Thank you so much for that. And we do have Freedom Schools here in the city, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Dean Jackson, our Dean of the School of Education. If someone has any questions, she would be your contact.
Yes.
She helps to run those. Yes, most certainly.
It is. Yes.
It is. All of that. Yeah, we all know what that meant.
Yes.
All of those.
Freedom School, yes.
So I would be remiss if I did not, ask you one final question, because last week, actually this time last week, we held, so all month of February, basically, several women in the Indianapolis area used your book as a book read, and I was able to facilitate a dialogue about it last week in preparation for you being here today. So my lineup, so if you haven't seen one of her texts, this one is Sister Citizen: Shame, Stereotypes, and Black Women in America. And so one of the burning questions that I have is, this is 11 years old.
I know.
If you had to do a second edition, what might be changed or new? And maybe what's next?
Yeah, so it's funny, because you probably know the book better than me right now, because I have, like, I don't go back to it. The big failure I see in the book, not failure is the wrong word, the big missing piece is that I don't talk about joy. I feel like the book is only represents the part of our experience that is a suffering part. It's in part, I mean, this is a book that was written, this is the Get the Full Professor book, and so there's a lot of like political science, there's a lot of like speaking to the academy, and so a lot of that is also a deficit positioning, right? And so it's not that I'm mad about it, but I knew at the time, and certainly especially a decade later, know that although it captures a lot of those important struggles, it also doesn't capture all of the rest of who we are.
The genius.
The
What you
genius.
said today.
Right.
That's book 2.
Yeah, well, so the next book, right, so the first book is the other husband's name, so that's why people don't know. That's the Liz Harris Lacewell book. She wrote that one, then like got a new husband, new book. And that's how it works. Yes, we learn from our mistakes is one of the things. And so this one, but the one that I have been working on for a long time, and it's actually more than anything, it's media that has been a barrier in writing because I get very focused on what's directly in front of me. But the book I've been working on for at least the past 3 years is called Earth Movers, and it is about Black women in agriculture. So I really do love the earth. I really have been thinking a lot about Black women in agriculture, but agriculture in the broadest sense. So if you think about what an earth mover is, right? So if you think about like heavy equipment, right? So if you're going to build a pond, you can probably dig it yourself, but if you're going to build a swimming pool, you get an earth mover to come in and like move the earth for you, right? There's also like Afrofuturist, like Chinese sci-fi film. So there's a Chinese sci-fi film about earth moving where basically, think of how many times you've seen the like sci-fi films and like the earth is blowing up so the people escape, right? Like, woo! But in this particular film, they take the earth with them. So they build a big, they build a big ship and they take the earth with them. They move the earth because what's happening is it's like the solar system is imploding. So they're like, well, the earth is really good, so they take the earth with them. So to me, both of those things feel like Black women. So Black women move earth in the sense of consistently acting as heavy machinery. So we act as heavy machinery in movements. We act as heavy machinery in family. We act as heavy machinery in organizations. We literally move earth to make it possible to build foundations. But also, when Black women escape, we take everybody with us. So, you know, Harriet Tubman doesn't just go. Harriet Tubman goes and comes back, and she goes, she comes back, she goes, she comes back. And often we won't go unless we can take a few people with us. So we are also earth movers in that sense. So I've been playing with, it's a weird book, which is part of why it's taking a while, but really trying to think through what does it mean to be looking at the work that Black women do that is agricultural work and understand it not just, certainly as environmental justice, certainly as food, certainly as labor, but also as earth moving in both the sense of specializing in the holy and possible and taking all your people with you.
Exciting. Look forward to reading that one day.
Yes, you should tell them children to grow up and go away so I can write.
Mine are grown.
And I just tell the 8-year-old, grow fast, but then I'm like, don't grow faster. Yeah, I know.
So I have to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for giving us the toolbox. And thank you for reminding us the importance of centering Black women in America. My heart is full. I feel like I have some additional things that I need to go back and dig up and read. And so I know I speak for the many people here as well as virtually that this has been so impactful and so powerful. And we really, really appreciate you. So thank you. So join us. Great.
I promise if you give me 10 minutes and 10 minutes only, we will be out. I first feel that I would be remiss if I did not say thank you. Thank you to the board for having the vision to bring such powerful people. Thank you for the work that you do. I genuinely appreciate the speakers that we have, but thank you to you. One of the things that as I was writing notes, I think for me, you gave me a new pride in something that has happened to many of us. I recall a time my children were young, and I am married, and a lady, I won't say names, came up to my son to say, you know, your grandmother was my family's maid. And I remember being, you know, just kind of taken aback because the way that she said it was not in a way that you thought that she should have. But thank you, because you give me pride, and I hope that my children can see the pride when people come to you and they mean evil. Sometimes God means it for good. And I'm very proud to be the daughter of someone, the granddaughter of someone that worked hard, that didn't have an education, but made it a way for me to be a first-generation college student. So thank you for letting me see it in that way. I take back my anger. To all of you, I am so happy to see us in person. To the virtual audience, thank you for sticking with us. I do have a sneak peek or a surprise for you. I want to make sure that you remember to fill out the forms. We are sending lots of information, and lots of it is coming back, so we want correct information. So please make sure you fill out your information. But a sneak peek. So one of the things that we have been really candid about is our intent to engage and to have meaningful conversations with individuals that look like us, that share our experience, but that can also help us to engage in a conversation that is powerful to us, local and global. And last year, in the last 2 years, we've seen that there has been an influx of appreciation for artistic expression. And artistic expression for us and our community has an even deeper meaning. We think of the civil rights, we think of the music and the art that instilled pride and that helped us to understand what was going on. And so next year, as we put together our season, we are hoping that we can do something just a little different to shed light on the artistic expression in our community. I will not give names, but I will give you this. I implore you to go out and get your ticket. For tonight and tonight only, we will have reduced price for season ticket passes. I will tell you that we will have nationally recognized speakers that can speak to the art and the culture of the African American community right here in Indianapolis. We will recognize local leaders that have gone nationally, that have made a dent in the space that they're in and their artistic expression. And we will give you an opportunity to engage in a conversation with leaders right here in our city that are really making a difference across the country. That's all I'm gonna say. Go get your tickets. But before you leave, I also want to make sure that we give a little credit to the next speaker that is coming. Thank you again for talking about those that need to follow Dr. Barber. We've got a commercial that'll talk about his coming April the 13th. We encourage you to be here. Again, for individual tickets, if you have not already done so, please get your ticket. We apologize we've had to reschedule, but you do not want to miss him coming April the 13th. We will be in the city. So get your tickets. Again, we have a commercial. Thank you all. Thank you to our board. Thank you to our sponsors and season ticket holders. Dr. Shabazz, you have been an amazing partner and friend, and we just appreciate you. And thank you so much, Dr. Perry, for being here. Commercial.
The truth of the matter is, my brothers and sisters, you cannot talk about labor rights and not talk about civil rights. You can't talk about racial justice and not talk about economic injustice as well.